Now, I'll start by saying thank you. Again, thank you for everyone. I know everyone's very busy and dedicating this amount of time. OMSC, I appreciate. And then also, as you'll kind of see throughout, if you all here for this morning meeting, but also, of course, you'll hear throughout this meeting, there's a lot of big efforts going on. And so again, want to say thank you to all that are involved in those. And I think you all see the value, I do at least, in OMSC being a big mechanism for coordination and collaboration. So wanted to start the meeting with a thank you to you all. And there does seem to be a different set of folks in the online. So I think a roundtable introduction, I think, is still good. And so just kind of like this morning, if you could just state your name, maybe your title as well, and then your agency. We'll go around the room here, and then I'll ask Carol to help me with the online folks. So maybe Adam, to start with you. Sure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Argo. I am a principal planner in ODOT's statewide transportation planning unit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Coram Ketchum. I'm a planner for Campo. I work for OCW COG.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Nick Meltzer. I manage the Albany area MPO and Corvallis area MPO.
Hello, I'm Matt Bin. I'm the manager of the modeling and forecasting section at Portland Metro.
Hello, I'm Peter Bosa. I'm a principal researcher at the Metro Modeling and Forecasting.
Hello, I'm Kelly Clark, a principal transportation planner at the Central Lane MPO and Council Governments.
I'm Chris Nelson, the manager of the Transportation Planning Analysis Unit here at ODOT. I'm also, sorry for not saying this earlier, I'm also the chair of OMSC, and then also Peter, sorry for not saying this, you're the vice chair.
Oh, I should have mentioned that.
Carol Richardson, OMSC facilitator.
Ray Jackson, senior planner, Middle Willamette Valley Council of Governments, Salem Kaiser MPO.
Becky Knudsen, I'm an economist for the Transportation Planning Analysis Unit at ODOT under Chris Nelson.
So online we have Glenn Bowen. Glenn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi there. I'm Glenn Boland. I'm a principal planner in Region 1 for ODOT, and I'm going to be on the agenda later this afternoon.
And Alex Bettinardi.
Yep, Alex Bettinardi, ODOT TPO.
Cody.
Hello, Cody Meyer, Land Use and Transportation Planner with Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Jumping around on me here. Tara.
Hey, Tara Widener from the Oregon Department of Transportation Climate Office.
Dejan.
Dan Didich, ODOT TPO.
I always mess up your name. I'm so sorry. Let's see who we are. Sal.
Yes, Sal Hernandez, Oregon State University. I'm an associate professor and also the associate director for the Center for Freight Transportation for Efficient and Resilient Supply Chains.
Kim.
Kim Sapinar, Salem area MPO.
To Jeffrey Hood. Metro. He stepped away. We have Liming Wang from PSU.
Hey, Liming Wang, associate professor at urban study and planning at PSU. I'm also one of the coordinator of the Oregon Modeling User Group with Kyle and Garth.
Matt Delata.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Matt Delata. I'm the Transportation System Division Director for the City of Hillsborough.
And Nick Forty.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Nick Forty with Federal Highways.
Robert Kohler.
Good afternoon, everybody. Robert Kohler. I'm a transportation planner at AirSage.
Chen Chiu.
Good afternoon. I work for TPAL.
Steve Kelly.
Steve Kelly, transportation planner with Washington County.
Sylvan.
Sylvan Hoover, ODOT Climate Office.
Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler Deakey with the Bend MPO.
Did we miss anyone online? Caleb, I don't think we got you.
Hello, my name is Caleb. I'm with ODOT in the TPAL office. I'm an analyst and modeler.
I see Joe Broach joined.
Yeah, hi everyone, Joe Broach, researcher modeler at Portland, researcher at Portland State University and current chair of the OMSC Travel Survey Subcommittee.
Cody, did we get you? We got Cody. Okay, I think that's everyone.
Great. Oh, perfect. It's a great group, and thanks, Carol. I know that sometimes that's moving around. That's actually hard. So that was very well done. And yeah, we'll get right into the agenda. So we have a few business items before the presentations today, and go into the general business, and that's for folks that have seen the minutes, the meeting minutes from the prior meeting, the biannual meeting in April. And I'm not going to have like a formal request to accept the minutes, but wanted to pause here just in case if anyone had any changes or any corrections or anything they wanted to add from the meeting minutes from the last meeting. And while y'all thinking about that, I just want to say thank you to Ray as well for hosting that meeting.
Thank you.
And also noted here, so it sounds like there's no changes. Also to note, the next meeting, again, these are biannual, will be in April, on April 17th. So okay, please mark your calendar. Another quick item of business is letting people know about upcoming conferences. And so here's a list that we've compiled here. Just wanted to pause so people can be aware of that list, but also if there's anything else that makes sense to add or bring to everyone's attention, we'll also pause here.
Tara's posted the Consortium for Scenario Planning Conference.
I believe that's the Lincoln Institute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tara.
Yep.
Also just says kind of an FYI for the Northwest Transportation Conference. I know they have abstracts open. I think they're due at the end of November 30th. I know here at ODOT and TPAL and also the planning section, we're thinking of a couple different presentations and sessions. So that just FYI, if folks are interested, we can also collaborate if there's joint topics, worth exploring too.
Is anyone going to this? Or from Jeffrey at Metro North American Regional Science Council, November in San Diego. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Actually, good call, Kelly. I'm just kind of curious if people are attending these. Maybe
It's like I might be going to TRB annual meeting.
And why?
Because looking to be part of a panel presentation, bringing some of what we presented to the TRB's travel, what was it? Travel forecasting planning annual
ITAP, yeah.
ITAP.
Yeah.
To a
Station planning.
yeah, to a multi-session meeting, which would actually also include Tara Widener's work monitoring greenhouse gas emissions and green vision eval stuff.
And Jonathan Slayson from RSG.
Yeah, Jonathan Slayson from RSG be my associate on that.
it does sound like several folks attending TRB as well. Sounds good. Again, thanks, Tara, also for bringing those to our attention. Moving on to kind of the ongoing business. So yeah, so here we'll hear updates from our main subcommittees within the OMSC. As you can see here, that these are the three main ones: the Oregon Modeling Users Group, the Modeling Program Coordination Group, which we had a meeting earlier this morning on, the Technical Tools Subcommittee, and also the Travel Survey Subcommittee. So we'll kind of go into some brief updates from each of those. And we'll start, I think, Dr. Wong had a time commitment, so we'll start here first. And so I'll probably just, Dr. Wong, feel free to provide an update about some of the activities from OMOG.
Yes, sure. Thanks. Thanks for moving this along. I have an appointment at 2:00. I cannot reschedule, so I have to appreciate for the accommodation to do this OMOG update first. So OMOG coordinating committee including myself, of course, Kyle and Hauger from Metro and Garth from DKAs. So since April, our last OMSC meeting in April, we had 2 events. One is in June 6th, the post-TRB innovation in travel analysis and planning, brown bag. We occasionally, or at least for some of the major meetings, we kind of do a recap, invite participants to those meetings to kind of give us a little bit of the vibes, so to speak, of those conferences. So since we were talking about TRB, for those of you planning to go to the TRB annual meeting, we'll be in touch. Certainly, if we miss anyone or if you have something to share, certainly come to our late January, early February brown bag, post-TRB brown bag as well. It's only a constant be there invitation for all of you. And this is where we learned that the work by presentation by Adam and Jonathan got basically the best presentation award at the Innovation for Travel Analysis and Planning Conference. So we invite them, they are kindly agreed to give us basically every round of their presentation scenario analysis for the Oregon Transportation Plan. We did that in August, and it was well attended, and then certainly a fascinating work and well deserved for the award. And then only kind of scheduled looking ahead event, we have we scheduled next Thursday, I believe, from 9:30. We have a update, a session guest moderate by Tara on the interagency update on GHG analysis. Again, you're welcome to join us. I believe the information will be available both on our website as well as I believe Carol will send out a link to the OMA mailing list if not there yet. And then in mid-December, December 13th, we have another session in bringing probe data into modeling work. So Chimai and who is, but from Ohio DOT will talk about the artist data and then how to bring the gap between speak data, prop data, and modeling. And then in late January and early February, haven't scheduled yet, we will have our annual post-TRB annual meeting. Again, you're all invited, especially for those of you that are planning to go TRB. I was only happy to hear from you what your takeaway from this year's TRB meeting. And next slides, as usual, we'll welcome any suggestions for future topics. Feel free to send us an email, and that email address or contact any of the coordinators. Looking forward to seeing you in one of those OMOG events. That's all for me. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I will pause in case if anyone have any questions about OMOG or any comments. Very good. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good upcoming sessions for sure. Again, kind of moving along in the agenda. Next update is from Becky Knudsen on the Modeling Program Coordination Subcommittee.
Hey, everybody. So I'm the chair of the subcommittee, but Tyler Diekey is the vice chair as well. So we work together as a team to come together and as a standing committee. So we're always in place. We never go away. We discuss current and future topics that are relevant to policies that are addressed by the state and our OMSC partners. And what we do is we meet about quarterly. We'll meet more if we have more information to cover, and we'll meet less if we don't have much to talk about and we just got a lot of work to do. And the members include most of our OMSC partner agencies, and we're comprised of staff who are actively working on planning activity that implements and applies modeling tools and methods. And we rely on the other subcommittees as our team partners to conduct more focused activity, such as the recent GHG subcommittee and the technical tools subcommittee and the travel survey subcommittee. So next slide, we have done a bunch of different stuff over the last 6 months. We met in July and we're updated on topics that are of ongoing interest to this group, such as the CFEC activity, especially related to modeling, equity, GHG modeling, technical tools, and the travel study. We learned more about evaluating big data derived products from Josh Roll, who's our resident expert on this topic at ODOT. Josh is leading the development of a TRB e-circular. It's called the 2024 Advancing Highway Traffic Monitoring through Strategic Research, which is going to include an entire chapter that's devoted to vehicle probe data and the various big data projects. So this will be a very valuable resource to us to support the analysis that's going to be conducted in Oregon. We also updated the annual modeling tools inventory table, which helps us keep track of the activity that we have planned over the next year, and then try to anticipate what we're going to be doing the next 2, 5, and 10 years. And that's where we discover things like, hey, maybe we should collect a bunch of traffic count data in anticipation of the travel survey. So that kind of collaboration and planning. And we also look for opportunities to pool resources across all the agencies with this annual update to our tools and planned activity. So at each meeting we strive to share experience conducting analysis using models, and that means model applications. And last July, we learned about scenario analysis prepared for the Bend MPO area. Next slide. I actually was efficient today and I prepared notes so I didn't ramble. So the MPC subcommittee just met earlier this morning, and we had brief updates on standing topics that we always cover, like CFEC, freight, although we have nothing to report on freight at this time, equity, a lot of information related to equity, as well as a reminder that the ODOT research section has a call out for research proposals that'll be funded in the next year, in the next fiscal year. And as Josh shared earlier today, represents over $1 million that's available for research projects. So we encourage everyone and anyone to submit ideas. You don't need to know who's going to do it. You just need to submit a proposal that describes a problem that research could look into and benefit practitioners like us. So keep it in mind. I think the due date is the 15th or something close to the 15th of November. So yeah, put your thinking caps on and think about that. The initial proposals they asked for are really short. 1 page is sufficient. You have up to 2 pages, I think, to do it. So there's plenty of room, but it's a very simple process to just get that idea out there. And a really good example of this is the e-commerce follow-on survey that we're going to do. We're already collecting travel survey data. We're asking households about their basic e-commerce. Have you ordered something this week? And did you receive something this week? And we will then follow up with people who took the survey and ask them more detailed questions. And so we're already funding the survey under the OTS umbrella. And this research is funded by ODOT Research to pay Miguel Figliosi and his team to implement that follow-on survey. So that is going to be really cool. Let's see what else we had. James Powell shared information on what DEQ has been doing to develop some vehicle emission rates, which will end up giving us nice lookup tables that we can use for GHG analysis, monitoring, and reporting. And we had a presentation by Joe Gordon of Metro and Nick Meltzer, Cascades West, representing Corvallis and Albany MPOs to share information related to performance measures used to evaluate equity. So this is really the new emerging topic area. We've got to figure out how to get information informed in a form and based on solid data that helps us figure out if we're making progress or not. And the last slide, we talk about looking ahead and what we're going to do. Our next meeting will probably be in February, maybe a little late, late January. We have tentative plans to hear about an update on a research study on medium trucks. There's a potential presentation regarding use of TNC data, which is that transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft and Zipcar. And that would be looking at TNCs represented within the GHG modeling tool Vision Eval. And then we always have a modeling application topic now so that we can really start understanding how everyone is using their model in the state. So that actually has been a really interesting new agenda item that we've had for about a year now. And that is about it. There's going to be more information you'll hear from the other subcommittees that kind of cross over to this group as well. So we got lots more coming here.
Thank you, Jackie. And yeah, again, pausing for any comments or questions about the great work PC subcommittee. Sounds good. Again, I think this morning's meeting also went great. Again, going to our technical tools subcommittee. Alex, yeah, feel free to give us an update.
Yeah. So as a reminder, Tech Tools Subcommittee is allows for kind of ad hoc topics to be brought up and worked with subgroups within the OMSC. So we've got a handful of things going. Next slide, please. The main theme of all the work that is running is you know, this could easily be a part of or follow the survey, but you know, basically we're getting ready to use that big expensive survey that will be complete in about a year. So most of these things are one-time elements that are being fired up to ensure that we're OMSC is properly prepared to capitalize on the survey effort. So the first bullet is talking about getting counts together. That's so that alongside the survey, at the same time the survey is being done, we have as many counts collected and available across the state to calibrate and validate against. So that's occurring. The second bullet there is around all for this. When you do the travel survey, in order to use a survey in modeling work, you need to create not just what people did, but also the option set that they had available to them. So the world basically, and so part of that world is the transportation network, the supply side that they have access to. So you can understand the context in which they made decisions. So we have a statewide network, multimodal statewide network that has been linked to our pro travel speed data that we purchased, so we can understand not just the network they had access to, but the speeds that they were, levels of congestion that they were seeing as they made decisions. So that network has been acquired and is available to be freely distributed. So we're working with our MPO partners so that everyone can get access to that as desired. I guess right in the middle here, not quite related with that survey discussion, although all of this is, all OMSC things are related together. But we're under Tech Tools, we're having we've been we've had for many years an emerging tech conversation. I guess, like all these things are related. So, one way that it ties into the survey is we are looking in the survey into new behaviors and new travel modes around micromobility. As an example, further in the future, we're looking to build the next generation of models will have an automated vehicle class of travel. And so those are elements that are being discussed there, prepping for the use of that survey in the next travel demand model series, which if I jump down to the fifth bullet there, I'll jump back to the fourth in a second, but the fifth bullet is one of the major things that's happening under tech tools. That's discussion around all of the Oregon MPOs and the state of ODOT and the state ODOT collaborating on the next generation of travel demand models, which is planned to be a joint estimation using this upcoming survey and all of this data that we're talking about getting established for it. So that kicked off on April 20th, and we're about halfway through in the design phase, looking to complete that by spring. They're still on track to complete that by spring. So that's one of the major pieces moving forward that's going to be ready as soon as the survey is done, so that we can move right into estimation with all this data that we're acquiring and collecting collaboratively. So jumping back to the fourth bullet, there, as it was mentioned kind of on the MPC side as well, there's continual discussions and review of the new big data sources that are coming out and the tools that those third-party providers are advertising to the worldwide community, national community in here in Oregon. And so we've got both Joe Broach from Metro and Josh Roll kind of heavily involved in that. And they're bringing back discussions to the MPC and tech tools at kind of critical or at meaningful points in the timeline. So those discussions are happening in the background as well. No current immediate updates planned there, but they're kind of a constant evaluation is occurring on all sides. And then the last bullet, things completed in the last 6 months, on the urging of Peter Hurley. Peter really emphasized the importance to understand the metrics that we need to be delivering for the state prior to having our model estimation and model development complete. So with Peter's well thought out guidance there, we started the metric conversation back on February 2nd and through the summer. We got some amazing feedback across the 6 goal areas of the OTP, having specific group discussions around how we were going to deliver the metrics in each of those kind of key goal areas, which maybe vary across different RTPs, but are very common things like equity and safety and mobility and economic vitality, and environmental stewardship and maintenance of the system. So while they were specific to the Oregon Transportation Plan, very common across I believe all of the state's planning work. So we had those conversations, rich conversations with each of those 6 groups, and we've boiled down the lessons learned there. Have returned those findings back to the model design discussion to ensure that the model design is going to deliver to the extent it's possible on the metrics needed in each of those goal areas. So the initial work with that metric conversation is complete. But the next phase will be as that design gets complete and before we roll into estimation, following back with those groups and talking through the design and making sure that there's nothing that we left on the table that we should refine before we go to full model development and deployment. Next slide. So those are things that are actively being worked on and things that we complete over the next 6 months. So where are all those things going? The big one is completing the joint estimation design contract in the spring. Again, we're on track for that. We're about in the middle right now. And so I believe in the spring, right as the survey is being complete, our design will be complete. And again, we'll be working to line up contracts for estimation rolling after that. And there'll be more technical tool sub discussions around beyond the design and estimation. The account program is continuing to collect data, and as our partners across the state are in a position to start looking at and digesting that data, we have the ability to start providing MPO or similar geography extracts of that data as requested. So that should be functioning and ready to go. The asterisk there is that a couple of asterisks, but one is that we're still in the process. It's still like kind of beta. We can pull all the data, but it's we're working on formatting, and so anyone that pulls now would be helping us think through what the right way to format the data is coming out. So those are ongoing, and that data is available. Our next emerging tech conversation is scheduled for January 17th, just after TRB, and we'll be coordinating on research efforts that are ongoing and moving forward some of the findings and the recommendations of the emerging tech group to date. We're hoping by the end of the year that fourth bullet, we have a lot of the groups that ODOT supports RTPs for, the smaller MPOs in the region are approaching their RTPs. We have a lot of CFEC, CFA work that is anticipated. That CFEC, CFA work is a critical part of that is both the VMT that is generated and then related to the VMT, what the overarching price structure of the state of Oregon, both now and in the future, is. And so as we are anticipating having these RTPs for the next 4 to 5 years and a lot of CFA work, we're working to get our reference assumptions around what the fleet looks like and the price to travel across the state well documented and well established. In the past, we've just kind of taken current conditions and pushed them forward. That's no longer the case moving forward. There's too many things that are known to change in between now and the planning horizon, and so we're working on getting those well documented and refined. And our intent before the end of the year is to get the assumptions that ODOT has worked out in all of the GHG and DLCD work to the OMSC members for their similar consideration in updating their RTP assumptions with what that future fleet would look like from an energy consumption and also a dollars to use, dollars to operate a perspective. And then the final bullet ahead, if any peer review or kind of similar level discussion is needed across the OMSC, Tech Tools is there to serve that need. So I think that's my time. Handing back the mic.
Yes, thank you, Alex. We'll pause if there's any questions or comments. Reaction. One reaction is what going on?
I've got a quick question for Alex, actually.
Yeah, go ahead,
if you guys can hear me. Yeah. Alex, always an impressive portfolio you're overseeing there, bordering on ridiculous amount of work, I would say, but not to add more to it. I assume when you're talking about this count coordination and data, we're just talking about ODOT's motorized count program. Is that right?
I skipped over multimodal. The majority of it is motorized. ODOT's counts are multimodal, and so we have a handful of continuous multimodal or active, bike and ped counters across the state. And also when short-term counts are collected, especially for projects, they are typically all modes, like our intersection turning movement counts are typically all modes. So when we do a poll, all of that comes along. It's not like, no, we just give us the cars and the truck. Anyway, so all of that comes along. The hesitancy to really sell it as a multimodal count program is that whatever percentage you want to kind of guesstimate in the 90s is going to be motor, truck and car. So there's going to be pretty minimal bike and walk. In the metrics discussion, I think it really came out that if we really want to deliver on the metrics that the state needs across, it's not just like a bike and a walk problem, but across our goal areas, we really need to do a better job. Like as an example, safety, understanding exposure to vulnerable travelers is critical to understanding safety. So if you want to understand safety, you need to do a much better job at properly representing where biking and walking is happening. And to do a good job of that, you really need to check your model to make sure that it's properly so we can. I think in general our models are pretty good at globally representing mode share, but are we getting those travelers on the right segments approximately? So that requires a good amount of data. So since that metrics conversation, again, thank you, Peter Hurley and others, there's a lot of people that have been in there. It's been on my mind more significantly than it ever has been in the past that we need to get a good level of count data there. We also have the PSU portal, which provides some confidence. And so my thought, since we're doing this great joint estimation and development, has been that maybe not every area in the state will have amazingly complete multimodal data, but I'm hoping and I'm somewhat confident that we'll be able to either focus on a couple of key areas that do have a lot of good data, or maybe piece together sub areas of areas within our given modeling regions that have good multimodal data, and verify that in those regions that we have good data, that our models seem to be hitting that, to provide the confidence that hopefully we can extrapolate across the rest of the network. I don't know if that's where you're getting at with your question. I apologize. I probably spent way too long with that, but there is more than just cars and trucks. It's not as much as we all like, and we're going to try really hard to scrape together what we can and deliver a better answer moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. Mostly just a vote of support for continuing on that multimodal count. It's great to know that they're included in this, at least the ODOT's level. Yeah, I do wonder if there's some role for the OMSC here in helping to coordinate. I mean, I know there are a lot of more counts going on around the state. We have our own traffic counting program at Metro, and then there are lots of localities, different jurisdictions are doing bicycle and pedestrian counts. It'd be neat, even if it's in a demonstration sense, tying into the joint estimation to try to find a way to bring those together and standardize them. I know Josh Roll at ODOT has already done quite a bit of work at least on the bike and pedestrian count side on, kind of harmonizing the data from different sources. So, something to keep in mind, not that you need another bullet point, but it definitely seems like a need from both modeling and performance measurement to have multimodal counts. And I kind of like your idea of focusing on areas where we already have some momentum or some, critical mass, rather than just spreading scattered counts around the state. So, thanks for the explanation.
No, well stated. I don't think it's getting enough attention, and I think it could use additional thought from the OMSC. Well stated.
Yeah, good question, good discussion. Don't want to be like a weird OMSC cheerleader here, but still new to Oregon, still new to the agency. And when I was working in Louisiana, I wanted to actually felt something like the OMSC in Louisiana. I just want to point out, just kind of imagine all those efforts that Alex was mentioning without the OMSC, without kind of statewide, collaboration, coordination. I mean, it's needed. So again, just want to thank everyone that's involved in those, especially Alex.
It's not weird at all.
Yeah, I guess usually not the cheerleader role route. All right, sounds good. I think we'll move on to the next subcommittee, the travel survey subcommittee, with an update from Joe.
All right, thanks, Chris. So let me, looks like we're about on time here, and I'll try to keep us that way. I wanted to give you some reports out from the travel survey world. And so just as a reminder, the travel survey subcommittee operates ad hoc, but on sort of an ongoing basis. I'm the current chair in that role, but really we work as a leadership team. It's currently Becky Knudsen from ODOT, Kelly Clark from LCOG, yeah, I think we're in the middle of a very successful and pretty exciting effort, and just wanted to kind of update you on where we were on the current household survey collection process, but also remind you that we do other things as well. That's our main role, but we're also constantly getting information about how we can do a better job surveying, looking at doing things like Becky mentioned, the e-commerce survey, that can fill in the gaps that a big representative statewide survey that happens every so often can't necessarily hit. But for now, I'm going to focus on what's happening right now because we are in the field. So next slide, please. The fall data collection, which is our main collection for this round of what we're branding the Oregon travel study. Basically the next edition of OHAS, for those of you who've been around a while, is going on. We had a very successful pilot survey this spring that captured about 15% or so of our expected total responses. And we have now received the initial unweighted data from that pilot, which is a very exciting point to be at. We're currently reviewing as a small group, the leadership team and a couple of friends. That's going to go out more broadly very soon, probably in the next week or so. We'll probably tag some of you to help us review the data and documentation. If we don't, and you're interested in participating and kind of shaping the data that you're going to be working with in the future, then please reach out to any of us on the leadership team. So we're about halfway through the mailings of the fall 23 collection effort. We'll be wrapping up mid-November, just before, ahead of Thanksgiving, as the holiday season and winter starts to muck things up. Everything is going, I would say, very smoothly. We've got a great consultant team from RSG who is handling the day-to-day operation of it and constantly checking in and tweaking things with our support. We'll be back in the field. We'll take a break. We'll be back in the field in spring of 2024 to do our final data collection, and then the final weighting and data processing begins. But as I mentioned, we're going to get some data in the interim that we can start looking at and, potentially even start working with if we don't need the final survey weights. We're also this fall and this spring looking to capture some supplemental response. The main survey is address-based, randomized, but we're also looking to these particular groups that are either harder to survey or that we need more responses from to inform things like our new ABM, activity-based model. And that's going to be up to 3,000 university students from the three major universities, or University of Oregon, OSU, and Portland State here in the metro area. And then we're also working with some transit partners and community groups to get some additional representation from some of those groups. We expect the final weighted final survey results sometime around the end of 2024. Next slide. One note I wanted to make is on the request of the joint estimation team that Alex was just mentioning, we were able to add a more specific occupation question as a running change in the survey. And thanks to the fancy footwork of folks like Becky and Alex and our consultant team, we were able to get this done really quickly in a way I think we're really happy with. We were already asking, standard industry classification people worked in, but the model really needed something a little more precise about the type of job someone had. And so we were able, I think, to come up with a good balance of kind of user experience, not adding too much burden or sensitivity to the question, but also matching it to the modeling needs specifically. I think it's a great example, kind of a quick response thing that OMSC makes possible that otherwise would be a complete nightmare and would never happen in time, honestly, without that standing coordination and relationship. So I think it's going to be a win. We reduced it to 9 primary questions you see there, plus another category of folks that don't fit, and then some follow-ups that drill down in certain categories where we realize that top coding is just not always going to get you what you need. Next slide. So I'm going to share a few numbers with you as a sneak peek, just to reiterate, these are not at all final numbers or targets or anything, but this is where we stand as of yesterday, essentially. So this is statewide. You see the numbers from our spring pilot, which are closer to final, but still there's still some processing going on. But between spring and what we've mailed so far in fall, we've sent out about 400,000 invitations, and we've had about 6,000 households complete the survey. In the spring pilot, as many of you remember, we tested quite a few different mixes of incentive structure as well as mailing recruitment material types. And the reason we did that is to get the most bang for our buck in the main survey collection. And so far things are looking like we chose a good option. You can see the completion rate is something that we're happy with, about 2.5% right now, as best we can measure it. Statewide. The other number that's exciting to see there is that more than half of the households are opting to use the 7-day smartphone app collection. So they also have the option of doing a 1-day web-based or call-in approach, but of course that doesn't get us as much data. So this is exciting, and you can see how that kind of multiplies the data compared to past versions of the survey, right? Looking at that spring pilot, we have 2,600 households completed, but that gives us over 8,000 travel days and many, many more trips than we would get, which, especially important to those of us who are looking at things like we were just discussing, multimodal travel, different sorts of less common trip patterns. We'll have a much larger sample of, thanks to the new data collection techniques. Next slide. Another little teaser. So like I said, we just have gotten in the last couple of weeks delivery of some preliminary spring pilot data. I just wanted to pull something out of that to give folks an idea of this is a type of data that we didn't have available in the last study, which are GPS traces for non-motorized trips. So I just pulled out the bike and e-bike GPS data that we got along a section of the Springwater Trail near my house in Portland. We had 29 trips captured in this area. The color indicates the speed of travel. So those warmer, like yellow trips, are most likely to be e-bike trips. We have that data, though. We don't have to guess. And so this is the type of data we're getting. Of course, you don't have to process at this level. It's going to come all bundled up in the ways that you expect from past OHAS. It's just going to be augmented with this new GPS trace data, but we'll still have the standard trips file and household, person, and location, origin destination data as well. So yeah, pretty exciting. There's a lot, there's a lot that we're going to be able to do with this data. And at this point, we just want to be sure that it's, we're maximizing its value. And so we're working really hard, going back and forth with the consultant to make it the best documented that it can be. Next slide. So what's coming next, especially for you guys in the room, agency partners and others, friends of the survey and users. We have a almost real-time response dashboard where you can track where the survey responses are coming in from geographically, by different sociodemographic and other splits. If you were already signed up for dashboard access in the pilot, you should look out for a new email link to a new URL for the fall survey. We're going to preserve that old one as an archive, and the new one's going to be slightly tweaked. If you were not signed up for that pilot dashboard, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the survey leadership team or to Carol, and we'll direct you to the right folks to get you access to that dashboard so you can see how things are going in your community. We, as I mentioned, currently reviewing the pilot data and the documentation. I think it's really important, as a data user, to get in at this stage. So if any of you or folks that work for you or you work with, you think would be good folks to help us review and provide suggestions about the data format or the documentation, now's the time. We'll be reaching out to some of you. You don't have an option in the next week or so to help us with that review. But others that are interested, I'd say if you don't hear from us by say the end of next week, then you can reach out directly and let us know you want to be involved and have a preview of that data and documentation. See if it's going to do what you want it to do, and if not, our consultant is very responsive. I like to think we are too, and so maybe we can make it happen. But I'll look forward to working with you on that. Keep getting the word out, where you are, that folks should take this survey. It's been extremely, I would say, well crafted and well thought through in terms of both the data collection, the benefit for the burden involved, and also in terms of privacy protection of the data. And the incentives are pretty good, to be honest. So hopefully, as you get inquiries about it, you're able to tell folks to jump in. If you've done press releases or other, get the word out for us. Thank you so much for doing that. I think it's really making a difference. And Becky already hit on, we have our first sort of follow-on survey. Folks that take the survey are asked if they'd be willing to participate in a follow-on. And I just heard from the consultant yesterday that's tracking at something, or has been tracking at something like 70% of folks are willing to participate in follow-ups, which is very exciting. That's a neat pool that we already know some things about, right? That we can kind of select, say, e-bike users or those participating in e-commerce or not, and kind of tag them for follow-ups. So that's something else we're going to be kind of mapping out the future process for doing that. And we'll stop there. And looks like I've kept us mostly on time. So if there are any quick questions now, shoot. And if not, then you can always contact any of us on leadership team. That's Becky Knudsen, Kelly Clark, or myself. And we'll try to get you what you need. Thanks all.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Again, I'll answer, especially for folks online, in case they have any questions about the survey. All right. Again, thank you, Joe, and of course, Becky, for your leadership with the survey. And big deal. So moving on, in our agenda, come the presentation portion of it. And I think this was the last meeting. Adam, you presented on the OTP, Oregon Transportation Plan. I think at that time it wasn't quite finished, it wasn't adopted yet, and then now it is. So I'll be handing it over to Adam to talk about some of the implementation aspects of the OTP.
Thanks, Chris. And just for the record, again, my name is Adam Argo. I am in ODOT Statewide Transportation Planning Unit. And as principal planner, I suppose I'm the lead long-range planner for statewide planning. And thank you, Carol. As Chris mentioned, I've had the privilege of coming to OMSC before, previous occasions, while the process of updating the plan was still underway. And I believe in August, I was given the opportunity to do, as Lee Ming had alluded to, an encore of a presentation that Jonathan Slayson and I had delivered this past June at the TRV ITAP conference. And that was exciting in terms of talking about the real technical aspects of the scenario planning undergirding the process. But here we are. Now I get to speak, being on the other side of the wormhole, if you will, because if you would advance the slide, Carol. The Oregon Transportation Plan was adopted by the Oregon Transportation Commission in July of this year. So I do want to take a second and just offer again my gratitude for several members of folks on this meeting and on the OMSC who served as staff, as technical advisory staff, but also those here who were involved in the advisory process to move the project forward on policy development, also to vet where the technical and the qualitative aspects of the process really had to come together. And it just means a lot that those of you who know who you are were involved and commit and made the commitment to do that. Next slide, please. So I want to not take too much time as a remedial exercise, since I think the majority of you folks are pretty familiar with the main elements of the plan. But we do need to start on the vision aspect. The vision statement, just one sentence, supporting Oregonians, connecting people and goods to places. And look at these three things here: most climate friendly, equitable, and safe way. If you can push forward on the slide. And that is where our goals fit to meet the vision. And there are 6 goals. And I know we've reviewed those goals before. But Carol, if you can advance on to the right, you see those 3 elements of the vision are what we have in the plan instrumented as our priority lenses behind decision-making to inform the priorities in meeting the goals in the plan. And we'll get back, we're going to revisit that a little bit later in the presentation, but this is pretty important to kind of front with in going forward and talking about implementation of the OTP. Next slide, please. So again, this is a bit of a revisit, but in the OTP is a section that is a bit new as far as the development of statewide plans for ODOT. It's an element of a policy framework so that behind the large suite of policies and strategies, which are found in Chapter 6 of the plan, it's understood that we're really seeking to have an outcome-driven plan that's about saving lives, centering equity, reducing GHG emissions, securing sustainable, reliable transportation funding, and I have a little bit to say about that, maintaining the existing system, completing critical connections, and enabling efficient movement of goods and services. This framework is to also really help bring the stated 6 foundational goals of the OTP to what we're talking about in making in the priorities in the plan. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so in the OTP, for those of you who have taken the time to read it, and I greatly appreciate that, but I also would like to say we have an executive summary of the Oregon Transportation Plan that's available. I've actually have hard copies available on the table for those here in the meeting, but following the meeting, we can also provide a link. The thing about this executive summary, it's not designed to make the general public aware of what the OTP is. We believe we've done that throughout the 2.5 years of the update process. It's really oriented towards internal staff and transportation planning practitioners to understand how we're connecting vision, goals, policies to these top 10 implementing actions and the way we see it connecting to people in the respective realms of work as practitioners. So it's not that they're ranked, but it's certainly no accident that I would want to key on securing sustainable, resilient, and reliable transportation funding streams. I'm going to have a little bit more to say about that But the thing about that as a top implementing action in the Oregon Transportation Plan is how it has direct alignment with priorities that ODOT is putting forward in their next iteration of what's known as the Oregon Transportation Commission Strategic Action Plan, which is a more short-term element for ODOT's priorities, as well as what we're going to have to do in anticipation of what is expected in early 2025 to be a major reauthorization act to come out of the state legislature. So it's just something I want to key on right away, that as far as implementation goes, it's very intentional on my end to start thinking about the how and the who on implementation of these actions. And it really starts with the funding issue. And if those of you who have read the OTP or in it or have been a part of the process know that we very intentionally frame the serious issues around funding. We are headed for a pretty bad future, a pretty tough cliff, without or irrespective of the actions that we can do and do need to do. So I just want to kind of put that in high focus here. But we also try to connect, we really intentionally connected these actions to the priority lenses and the vision and in our policies and strategies. That includes the focus on reducing fatalities and serious injuries is really within the safe systems approach paradigm. If you all are familiar with that and follow FHWA guidance, we're embracing that and adopting that in this iteration of the OTP. Electrification of the system, of course, is an enormous lift that's going to be beyond just ODOT, but we certainly have a big role in that. I would say on life cycle of existing assets, I feel like those of you who do the frontline work down to project development and implementation probably have a lot of wisdom that I could graft on in trying to formulate a work plan approach on implementing the OTP. And on compact development and trip lengths, I would want to connect that to policy and strategies we put in the OTP to intentionally directly point to the blueprint for urban design, because those contexts of the land use surrounding particularly corridors and their scale of activity in those corridors is a real determinant of how we would think about implementing this action. So that one I would say is maybe not as short term as I could put some of the others in terms of where we're going to get to certain targets, objectives to it. It's a bit of a longer haul, but it's important that it's in there. Next slide. Can you? Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. These are the other five. I would say another thing I want to point out is that we're not starting from zero. It's recognizing too what's already underway by the agency. Leveraging emerging data and technology. I think of our subcommittee on emerging tech here as a group that's already stood up and helped inform where we can go on implementing that action. Completing and maintain data and mapping. I just want to also point out that on the social equity indices front, we've been doing a lot of work, and that includes the social equity index map tool that the state stood up that is available is a part of that, but we also look to OMSC to continue with how we would implement that action. And of course, reducing GHG and passenger VMT per capita, which I'll have a little more to say about that, is certainly something we're going to be in step with the Climate Office. We're going to have to be in step with our MPO partners we're really needing to also be in step with DLCD. So it's just, these may seem obvious, but what they do is they've really put forward the who I need to be involved both internally in the agency, who are partners to implementing these actions in the OTP, and on creating and practicing equitable processes. I do want to say we in ODOT need to strongly be aligned with ODOT's Office of Social Equity on successfully implementing that action. Next slide. So I did allude to the strategic action plan. It is ODOT's short-term priority actions. I would say at this time, it's not considered to be, say, the short-term implementing arm of the Oregon Transportation Plan. And it is separate, and it does have some elements that are a bit specific to ODOT that include workforce aspects, including our maintenance, but including DMV. But I would say we have overlap. There are those connecting elements. I alluded earlier to the fact that securing sustainable, reliable funding is certainly an action identified in the strategic action plan. Where you note up there, whereas the previous strategic action plan was designed as a 3-year, this next one, which is targeted to be approved by the Oregon Transportation Commission at the beginning of 2024, is really a 5-year plan. And there are, again, workforce, customer service oriented elements of it that we don't really address specifically in the OTP as to ODOT staffing issues. Next slide. Another aspect of implementing the OTP is certainly the major update that is very quickly now getting ready for kickoff of the Oregon Highway Plan. The objectives very much align with the OTP, and that if you're all familiar with the relationship of statewide plans, where you can consider the OTP the umbrella plan and the OHP as a topic plan in our modal and topic suite of modal and topic plans. But it certainly is pretty darn important that we note the connections. A lot of you in this group probably will have some connection and aspect of the update process to the OHP, of defining the state's highway system and informing the tactical level planning management decisions. We certainly need to tie to the OHP, but the OHP is going to have its own need for policies and update of policies and of implementing actions of getting to those issues at the corridor level, for instance. Next slide. And continuing on those objectives, the framework for prioritizing investments on the state highway system is a needed element of the OHP, where the OTP is a framework for this entire state as far as prioritizing investments. We also really need to get in the OHP, we need to get at a fine level of a framework for monitoring and reporting in the system. And yes, there will be an implementation component of the highway plan. Next slide. But there are other things that tie to OTP implementation. Yes, so I suppose you could say evangelizing the OTP. I made note of the executive summary document. It is available on the main project website, but you can also contact me if you want a nice stitched hard copy of the 11-page document. We can think of it as a part of what Policy Data Analysis Division Administrator Amanda Peets wants to see as translation documents. It's really how to make the OTP real to people across the agency and with our partners. Next bullet. There are other statewide plan updates in motion that includes an update to the Oregon Rail Plan, And there is a recently completed what's called a light update to the Oregon Freight Plan, but we know there'll be a major update in 4 years. That timing is very important considering we now have a newly adopted OTP. We will have a newly adopted OHP. So that's really going to drive some of the major elements of the freight plan that are going to be needed to be updated. Next. And I made allusion to this earlier. I can't say enough how critically important it's going to be of how the implementation work of the OTP gets in front of the 2025 legislative session. And that we expect a major transportation reauthorization to be taken up. If it doesn't happen in 2025, I suppose we are already of mind that it would be kicked to 2027. But I would certainly hope we are going to do what we need to do to help inform the governor's office, the Joint Committee on Transportation in the legislature on the needs and the critical priorities behind the investments we're seeking for meeting the goals of the OTP and looking out to a future of 2050. Which is the horizon year, as you know, for the OTP. Next slide. And bullet. Just want to note again, we have a lot of partner agency coordination that's important in terms of implementing the OTP. CFEC implementation, I actually tie that to where the MPOs are going on the RTP updates and to the many local jurisdictions that are going to be needing to update their transportation system plans in the next 5 years. It is an enormous list and it is a very heavy task that my unit has already taken a lot of upstream work to prepare for in sort of a work plan approach. But this also very much ties to how we get to successful implementation of the OTP. Next. There's also the development of our STIP for the 2730 cycle. As you all know, STIP being the state's capital improvement program, if you will. And again, PDAD Administrator Amanda Peets is helping lead the primary steering entity internally and she has directed the team to utilize our approach and framework in the OTP scenarios to build the business cases and the programmatic ask that we're going to have at the OTC to approve for the next STIP cycle. Next slide, next bullet. And there are other guidance documents that are important towards OTP implementation. That includes the Climate Office's Climate Adaptation and Resilience Roadmap and ODOT's broadband strategy. Those themselves really contain a number of recommended actions that I see as very much helping fill in the blanks for implementation of our top actions in the OTP. Next. Okay. So what I'm working on right now internally in the agency is both a framework to move on up my managerial chain all the way up to executive leadership of a framework for implementing the OTP that needs to be able to be activated as a work plan type approach. So these are the main elements I am trying to design and draw up for each of those top 10 implementing actions. It necessitates a crosswalk to the specific OTP policies and strategies. And again, I get to promote that the OTP executive summary provides you those crosswalks around those framework top priority actions. We need to identify the deliverables that are tied to those implementing actions and ranges to complete them. This probably doesn't look alien to a lot of you who have to do your own implementing work of your own long range and shorter range plans. identifying leads and champions and external partners again is going to be critical. And assessing a level of readiness and a level of effort behind each action. I believe that looking at that, achieving a sustainable, reliable funding is probably the one that is going to maybe have, in a short term, the highest level of effort across the agency, needing to move the level of readiness the fastest. Next. There are going to be needed future legal policy changes or needed legislative actions to implement actions that would include, by the way, instituting the road user charge. Right now, RUC, as you all know, is mostly a piloting aspect for the state, but we really have to start addressing what it's going to take to realize the RUC as what is the key transitioning element from the gas tax. Identifying relevant key performance targets, measures, and applicable key performance measures. I'll have a little bit more to say about that. And identifying the means of monitoring progress to implementing actions, including assessment tools. These last two bullets, I think, are very germane to us in this group, and that I look to this group as my technical advisory resource and kind of my vetting body on how we're going to make this happen, as well as what I have to do internally on supporting my division and the agency. Next. So this is kind of straight out of the plan, but just getting back to those lenses. Since the vision statement has these three main lenses of making decisions, we also set key performance targets set out to the year 2050 as central objectives to be tracked, ensuring they're being integrated in decision-making and target setting in order to ensure sufficient progress is made. And these are going to take a lot. On safety, we're talking about a statewide Vision Zero target. On climate, the passenger VMT per capita reduction of 20%, and then GHG reduction of 77% is quite the calling. And on the equity front, I just want to note, we will update the OTP with specific targets by the year 2025. Right now, there's work afoot where we're trying to coordinate with the Office of Social Equity and ensure we're in step with them on their on helping their programmatic efforts, and as well as getting it basically approved across the agency. Next slide. And so here, this is an example of what's Appendix B in the full OTP document. For those who are in the meeting, I actually printed out some copies of that Appendix B, and I'm not showing the entirety of that in this presentation, but this is an example excerpt. And I just want to relate here, and again, this is from the OTP, that our indicators are a complement to existing federal state performance measures. They're not a replacement. They're not meant to be a duplication. Fed legislation, I think some of you are familiar with this work, what this is about requiring from FHWA, they set performance measures in safety, pavement, bridge condition, system performance, and ODOT monitors and reports on the performance measures for the state. So we adhere to a legislative approved set of performance measures, as well as our metrics adopted through the state transportation plans. And we have agency specific performance measures used for benchmarking. And that's another thing I don't have a very solid grasp on right now in terms of implementing the OTP, what specific benchmarks might come about in terms of relating to those three big key performance targets. But I think that we really have work that I can leverage what's going on within this committee and what's going on within the agency to get there. And just want to note we draw for metrics already documented, as I noted. We've set up this table so that it gives you well, here's the KPMs part. Here's what the state does. But it's really just a kind of example element. And it's not, to me, the complete blueprint for where our measures will be once we really set forth and get further on implementing the OTP. And I think, Carol, that is after this other example where we have a mobility target. I will end and just note that with this matrix table on development of measures, you see that under the Oregon performance measures right-hand side, it's really where we're pointing from the mobility OTP goal to the sustainable transportation strategy. The STS, our blueprint to get us there on meeting the GHG reduction targets. So I think this is it's an example of the basically intersectionality across the goals, and that the measures, even though they're trying to meet these specific goals in looking at VMT, looking at travel activity, we know we have to do this through the priority lens approach. And this is an aspect of doing that on the climate lens. So I think that's all I have. Thanks a lot. And I'm hopeful, Carol, there might be a little bit of time for questions. I don't know. How are we doing?
Yeah, we're right on schedule, but again, don't want to limit questions. So if there's any questions or comments.
Otherwise, I'm very easy to find. You know.
No, I think we can take it.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I'll pause here again. Any questions or comments for Adam?
Well, that's okay, because I anticipate coming back to this. And hopefully we'll have a little more to say about where we went with some of these top 10 actions. And what if I am really able to develop this into a work plan, I would expect that I could share that, and we could get a little more drill down of what kind of performance metrics and monitoring would be behind some of this work that we could, as a team, collaborate on and keep moving with.
Oh, sounds good. I was gonna say another reaction was because that was again, private information, a lot of things to coordinate too in the implementation of the OTP. So I actually appreciate you kind of walking through that.
Oh, sure.
Drawing the elements out.
There are a lot of parts. I just want to get it. I am in the midst of trying to get it into this kind of something I can hold on paper, if you will, that gives me some direction. And it's really starting to happen, but there are a lot of questions yet.
No, sounds good. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Appreciate the hard copies too. Yeah, we got you right on time. Right on mark. So appreciate everyone's being so conscious on the time. So I think 15 minutes is a great time for a break. So for everyone here, also online, is back at 2:40 for Sal Hernandez's presentation. So 15-minute break. 2:40. All right. We'll get started again. Hopefully everyone online can hear us. So we'll go directly to Sal, Professor Hernandez, about the UTC that you're involved in. So yeah, please take it away, Sal.
Well, hey, appreciate it. Again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present today. And it's good to see that there are a couple of my ex-students or previous students on the actual online, both Dayon and Ali are both online. So again, they can critique me anytime. They can send me emails, say, hey, you could have worked on this. But again, I really appreciate the invitation. And so kind of want to just give a brief introduction, again, I am Dr. Hernandez, Rosal Hernandez. I've been here for over 10 years at Oregon State University. I'm an associate professor. I'm also the associate director of our new freight-themed UTC here at Oregon State. And yeah, so again, I'm going to kind of go over a little bit overview and then talk about some of the upcoming research projects, research areas that are related to this center and also the collaborations that we're looking to seek with all you all here today in this room. So let me get this moving here to the next slide. So just a quick overview. The winners for the University Transportation Center Awards were announced back in February. There were over 34 University Transportation Centers. This award or these centers were, have been around since 1988 when the first act was provided by the federal government. And with this go around, over $435 million in grants was awarded to these 34 UTCs. OSU this year is quite lucky. We are a part of 3 university transportation centers. The one that I'm a part of, which is a center for freight transportation for efficient and resilient supply chain. Again, it's the only freight themed center that was awarded this year, or this go around. The other 2 are part of my colleagues, Dr. Chris Higgins and Dr. Jason Weiss. Those are the Center for Coastal Research and Education Actions for Transportation Equity, and then the Center for Durable and Resilient Transportation Infrastructure. So those are the 3 that were awarded, and these tier 1s received $2 million per year for the next 5 years. So that's quite a bit of funding for the consortiums that are part of these UTCs. To kind of just give you an overview of the UTC that we are a part of and really excited to be a part of, and the great opportunities that we have. We're looking forward to collaborating with ODOT and other state and local agencies here in the state is, the Center for Freight Transportation for Efficient and Resilient Supply Chain. Now, this image that you see back here, I'm a AI buff, so I used Midjourney, which is a AI bot to create most of my images. So you might see this futuristic images throughout my presentation. So this is a good representation of our center, freight focused, freight related. So first, right, our University Transportation Center has falls under specific categories of goals and priorities. The main priority for us, for the federal government, was improving mobility for people and goods. The DOT strategic goals that our center meets are both looking at the economic strength and global competitiveness of freight systems. That's our primary goal, with our secondary goal and a big focus of our center is equity and transformation. And I heard the word equity being spoken here today. So again, that's one of the big focuses that we have through our center. Again, the main focus is one of the main goals for first, and is for us to maintain that U.S. economic competitiveness and security in the world through the supply chain oriented freight research, workforce development, and technology transfer and outreach. And so as a center, and one of the reasons why we were chosen to be the only freight-centric center this go-around is because our spatial distribution throughout the United States. So we have, these are the following members of our consortium, where the University of Tennessee is the head of our center, and the major players are Oregon State University, Texas A&M, and our minor institutions are Cal State Long Beach, North Carolina Agricultural Technical State University, and the University of Illinois in Chicago. So we're pretty well spatially spread, representing every part of the country. Oregon State represents the Pacific Northwest and all of the issues related and challenges related to freight issues in the region. So we're quite excited to represent the center and to receive funding yearly to conduct research on various topics. And I excuse the mess of this slide, but this is more of an informational slide. Again, you will be provided the slides, but this is in general the research thrust areas. We're focused on the freight systems, the systems approaches. What can we do to improve freight, both from an economic standpoint, from a safety perspective, and from a planning perspective. So there's different perspectives that we're looking into. So from freight systems to stakeholder behavior, to freight innovations for supply chain, and also definitely workforce development and technology transfer. So this is kind of the general outline of what our center will focus on. But as part of our center, this first year we received funding for some research projects. And so we are just initiated our first go around of research projects, but moving forward, we are highly, we are asked to definitely collaborate with the state and local agencies to come up with some neat research statements to then be able to leverage the UTC funds with any funds that are available by the state agency, so that where the projects can be done and have sufficient resources to do them. So one thing that I wanted to focus here is that our research thrust really looks at our ability to collaborate across agencies and various sectors and various areas within the freight transportation community. It doesn't just have to be the trucking industry or the rail. It can be, it's ports, it's anybody working in the planning side, the data aspect of it. So again, it's looking at that total collaborative perspective when it comes to our center goals. So just to kind of give you an overview of some of the initial research projects, the ones that were funded for this year go around, as part of the initial submission of our proposal were these two following projects. One is generating reliable freight disruption measures with freight telematic data, and then the impact of multimodal freight networks on private sector global distributions. And so these are two projects that are being both led by myself and Dr. Hector Vergara, who's another professor here at Oregon State University. But I'm going to focus a little bit more on this project because that's the one that I'm the major PI on the project, and why it's relevant to our community. And it's also one of the reasons when it comes to thematic research that we're kind of focusing on for the next 5 to 6 years, is the ability for us to use data sources that have been pretty hard to acquire to do this type of research. So when I'm talking about generating reliable freight disruption measures, we're looking at different types of events, different things that could disrupt the freight network. It could be a natural, like snowstorms, like for example I remember a few years back, Portland was pretty much shut down when we had Snowmageddon. If you guys remember that episode. And I remember I was flying back from TRB when we landed, and no airplanes were flying out, but we were the last airplane to fly in, and this is kind of what I was I came home to, just trucks on the side of the road, definitely a big disruptor in the movement of cargo for sure that day. And not only are we talking about looking at disruptions from natural stuff, but also looking at forest fires and the effect of fires. And so how do these different disruptions impact freight mobility and freight movements through the region? Does our network is there any resiliencies built in the network, and can we develop resiliency measures for us to kind of analyze and to be able to understand better that the movement and route utilization of these different freight industries and freight types? So again, this research just started October 1st. We're in the preliminary stage. So the research kind of, the idea is presenting a framework that's based off of freight telematic data or electronic logging devices that's being sourced to us by a company called RobinSight. And RobinSight is formerly it was part of eRoad. It pretty much split off from eRoad. And eRoad is a company, is a freight telematic data provider and service provider that's also located in Oregon. But RobinSight provides, is collaborating with us by helping us by acquiring a lot of this freight telematic data to do this research. And just one side note, BTS, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, is also invested in this project by providing us information and other resources for us to use on being able to build not just a regional understanding of network resiliency when it comes to freight reliability and movement, but also can we expand that research more federally, looking at it more at the nationwide perspective. So as part of the study, part of the objectives of this first study is again to generate these reliable freight network resiliency measures using freight telematic data, which again, it's a nuance, it's something new that has not been done before. To again, also because of being able to acquire the data to do this type of research. And also to model freight network disruption scenarios and countermeasures, to study the actual freight disruption cases using infrastructural and crowdsourcing data is available to us through our consortium partners, and also to chart the research path forward for subsequent phases and external funding. And this is where there's an opportunity to collaborate with the state and also the region to looking at it at a more regional perspective, because it's not just a local issue, it's a regional issue. If I-84 goes down or any of the major freight corridors goes down and we have this backup queuing of the freight systems, what is that costing us? What's the overall cost and issue with regard to those disruptions? And can we forecast them? Can we predict and provide a direction on providing solutions to the freight industry in that case? So again, this is an ongoing project, just started out. So in general, the purpose of our University Transportation Center is really to collaborate with our state and local agencies to leverage the funds that we are receiving from the federal perspective. So every year, we are provided 1 or 2 pretty large projects, funding wise, and are asked to come up with some research statements, research problems that affect our region. ODOT or WashDOT or Idaho DOT or Idaho Transportation Department. So again, any of these areas that may have issues or problems, and we'll be able to work together and develop these problems and leverage funding sources or other resources to come up with some really good problems that can be used to by the agencies and by you as planners to help you in your planning processes. So this is kind of a neat thing about the UTCs. This is we are going to be receiving quite a bit of funding to do these research projects. So again, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm always open to discuss different opportunities that we can come up with any freight themed projects or freight related issues. Or we do have a strong relationship with Robinsight, and being able to receive a large number of and good quality freight telematic data for the region to do a lot of our research. And again, we are also working with OTA as a partner in a lot of the projects that we have been conducting in the last few years, and that collaboration will continue moving forward, as well as working with you at ODOT. And also DEQ is another one that definitely can benefit from the work, because a lot of the stuff that we're also concentrating is looking at this idea of improving air quality, especially around ports in those areas. And that kind of is going to be a segue to a future research upcoming research that we're going to be conducting, where we're already collaborating with agencies in the state and also private industry to address those issues. Looking forward to in applications of newer technologies to help us reduce overall or improve air quality and reduce different types of pollutants in the air. So again, I will be actively emailing and presenting opportunities to you as members of the committee. And also, if you want to reach out and talk about opportunities to conduct research or to collaborate, that's a great opportunity for us to sit down together. Our next go around for the next year's research projects will be coming up here pretty soon. It's not November 15th, that's ODOT's, but it's a bit after that. Just to kind of start thinking about some ideas and opportunities to collaborate from any perspective that again, from air quality to freight movement, to planning, looking at the resiliency, anything related to freight and any mode of freight, as well as something that we are considering as far as our work as a center. So that would be, that's a perfect segue into this upcoming research focus areas that we're kind of looking into moving here into the next 5 to 6 years. And pretty much the thematic area is going to be revolved around this data source, right? This electronic logging device data. I just recently had the opportunity to present I was an invited speaker at this year's Innovations in Freight Data Conference in Washington, D.C., where many folks from the Federal Highway and other departments were present and provided great input, and we received opportunities to collaborate there in the future. And the big thing is, how could we use this data to address some of our current challenges, and then what are opportunities that exist for us to use this type of data for planning purposes and improve planning purposes. Currently, I'm sitting on a project with BTS looking at this freight mobility initiative. Again, this is a project where we're looking again at truck probe GPS data that will be, how could states and planning agencies be able to use this data more effectively in their planning processes? So this is a project that is finishing up this year, and it's going to, BTS is looking at how they can start providing this type of information for the planning process, for planning processes for states to use. So this is again, a huge kind of flow of new work that we're looking at now that we have access to this type of data, and we're quite lucky. We're one of 2 states that are actually have access to this much data as far as from an academic perspective. So again, this is leads into some of the thematic areas and some of the research focuses, some of the areas that we're seeing that we are going to start looking into some direct work into right away is this idea of truck parking. It's a bigger picture than a bigger problem than we imagined. A few years back, I finished a project, and Dayan was actually my grad student on that. If he's still on the call, I don't know if he's still here. But that was his research project that he was on, and it was at the time we were like, why is it really a problem? And then a few years later, oh shoot, there is a problem, not just locally but nationally. So I'm a part of the Trucking Industry Research Committee, and at TRB, and this was one of the big focuses this last TRB on how could we address this issue. And the biggest thing that came up in the meeting is that we don't have data to really address this issue. And again, one of the good things about being a member of this University Transportation Center is giving us the opportunity and also leverages our resources to acquire a lot of this data to do some of these research studies. So when it comes down to it, we actually started collecting data, and we've been working with RobinSite to conduct just a preliminary analysis, both nationally and regionally, on this truck parking issue. So we're looking at what meaningful data exists within their resources and what other data can we collect to merge with that. So this is just a quick overview, a quick map of 30-minute cluster parking sessions of drivers in the U.S. using RobinSite or eRoad data. And so we were able to, as you can see up here, let me see if I get it right about, where's my pen? Let's see if I can get my pen to work. In the Pacific Northwest, especially Oregon, we're seeing quite a bit of clustering when it comes to truck parking. And if we zoom in further, we start seeing some of these clusters being built, or you're seeing them over a period of time where they're parking, how long they're parking for, days of the week. So a lot of information can be gained from this type of data. And then we can start building opportunities to conduct some research and better understand how freight is parking, flowing, and also from a safety perspective. The reason I mentioned safety is that although you may have been aware of a recent crash that happened at the Sanium rest area just north of Albany. Again, a truck was parked on the side, a van was behind it, and another truck came in and crashed into that van, and we noticed that was some fatalities. But if we zoom in a little closer into the data, and we can start studying, patterns and behavior of parking, we can see here in the Sanium rest area where trucks are parking. Trucks are parking along the highways quite often, right? And a lot of trucking companies, again, this was a second truck parking study that was conducted by ODOT, revealed through a survey that a lot of trucking companies were telling truckers not to park in these facilities because of, there's just opportunity, there's a possibility of PDOs occurring. So being able to have access to this type of data can give us an opportunity to understand truck parking behavior, in addition to developing safety measures to improve safety along those areas, and maybe even help us understand how to redesign or replan or restripe or just rework all these rest areas to increase the capacity or utilization of the trucking industry in these facilities. And that was another project that we did with Eric Havoc and TPAL. We did a smaller study looking at truck parking and improvement, but just looking at different parking markings within the actual facility itself. So being able to utilize this data in a number, again, this is just an example of how we're going to be using this type of data for research and how we'll be using and collaborating with the University Transportation Center and local agencies to kind of expand this type of work. Other research areas that are upcoming for us is being able to assess the efficacy of EV trucks to reduce port emissions. We recently submitted a project. We're hoping to hear back soon from the Federal Highway if our project was selected, but it has a high probability that it will. But we're working with Morgan Logistics, who led the project, and we have a good collaborative team that includes the Southwest Research Institute, Daimler Truck North America, Star Labs at University of Washington, and then us at Oregon State, providing a lot of that freight information and data and modeling. So this is a direction that we see ourselves also taking on as a University Transportation Centers. How could we improve air quality around port areas, and can this type of data be used to help us understand parking behavior, time of day, and can we help improve that system? I'm almost done. I got, I think, 2 more slides. 1 more slide. And then another research that we just started looking into and working with RobinSite is this idea of looking at urban safety enhancements, associating crash harm with curb utilization through freight telematic data. A lot of larger urban areas are seeing, more larger or heavy vehicles being just parking on the side of the roads, unloading and offloading. These create safety hazards, and it's becoming a larger problem as community starts to flourish, business starts growing, and so this is becoming a big problem. But the issue is there's no data really to understand how big is the problem, or how vast is this problem. So working with freight telematic providers like Robinsight, we can start looking at building a picture on how long are these vehicles being parked along the area, and know how often, what's the frequency, and then be able to come up with some ideas with regard to crash harm and potential for different areas. And can we improve safety? Can we do something to improve safety in those areas? And so this is some of the stuff that we're seeing that are coming from the perspective of what we're looking at here, at least in our research group. Other things that I can definitely talk about is our ability to not just do modeling in a computer, but also bring in folks and simulate and provide, actually create a simulation environment with my colleague David Hurwitz to analyze different issues related to design and truck parking using his truck simulator that we have here at Oregon State. So the modeling, the data, and also having some naturalistic simulation procedures like using a truck simulator can allow us to enhance and look at different problems in different perspectives. So all these different things are, again, opportunities that that the UTC has provided us now from a funding perspective. Now we're looking to collaborate and come up with some more research opportunities to address some of the more local and problems or issues or challenges that you may have. So this is a great opportunity to get some additional resources and be able to work together as agencies. So again, I want to thank you for the opportunity for giving me to present a little bit more on the UTC, the things that we're doing, and some of the challenges that we see as far as upcoming opportunities in research and collaboration. So again, I want to also thank ODOT for this opportunity and FIRST for giving me the opportunity to present on these subjects. So again, if you want to know where I get all these images, I use Midjourney bot. It's pretty cool if you want to design your own images and don't have to worry about sourcing them or looking them out online. But with that said, that is my presentation for today, and I'm open for questions, and however I can answer for them, that'd be great.
Sal, Jeffrey was asking you to say what a PDO acronym means. What's that refer?
Oh yeah, so I apologize. That's property damage only crash.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So fender benders. So again, I apologize for that. I overlooked that. So trucking and the truckers are asked to not park because they're being involved in these smaller lawsuits, these smaller insurance claims, because their cars or them as they're pulling out of the truck parking facilities are hitting cars or other vehicles. But yeah, that's that. But I am open for questions, thoughts, ideas, opportunities.
Thank you again, Sal. I guess we're a little bit behind, but happy to take maybe one or two questions. I guess just one quick clarification. So, Sal, if you are interested in collaborating, it's probably the best thing is to talk to you if you have any ideas about proposals for your UTC.
Yeah, you can, shoot me an email, we can discuss, we can talk. Maybe you have research needs or thoughts or opportunities that you think having access to some of this freight telematic data or any other type of information or research opportunities could be a great start for us for conversation. So yes.
Thank you. And just kind of reiterate what Sal was mentioning from my own perspective. When I was in Louisiana, I managed a regional UTC. The technology transfer aspect of that was really big, and we definitely included public agencies, and I think we did a lot of good work to take that research and integrate it into, at least in Louisiana, and DOTD. So just kind of remind folks here that this is another option for us to try to leverage, and appreciate Sal for you talking about the center.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, we'll move forward. We have a next presentation by Rachel. We invited Rachel to give us an overview of her new transportation strategy section at DEQ. I think, Rachel, I see you're online. So yeah, feel free to, introduce yourself and unmute, and thank you again for being here.
Sure, great. Sorry, just trying to figure the logistics of everything. So I appreciate having the opportunity to talk for you and talking a little bit about the new air quality transportation strategy section at DEQ. So I'll try and zip through a number of these slides because I know we're a little behind time. So anyway, I just want to kind of give a little background about, what the air quality division is about and the sections there and how this came about. And so we have a number of sections which include things like we have our air quality program operations, and they kind of look at support coordination of point and area source programs, namely permitting work across the state, and then work with our regional offices to do that. We have our Cleaner Air Oregon section, which manages DEQ's health-based air toxics regulatory program, and looking at, how they'll develop and implement these new requirements and integrate it with our existing air permitting framework. And then we have our air quality technical services section, of which Jeffrey, who I believe is also on this call, is the manager of, and they provide technical and analytical services to the entire division, which looks at emission inventory, modeling, and data analysis. And then we also have our air quality planning section, which kind of serves the planning and resource function for the division, which looks at state implementation planning and program implementation, such as things like air quality criteria pollutant plans for ozone, PM, and regional haze, as well as wood stoves, open burning, and smoke management. And so then finally, we have the new Transportation Strategies program, which sort of evolved from the air quality planning section. And the reason why it came about is that, there was a recognition that we needed to develop specific policies and programs focused on reducing transportation-related air pollution. And so with that, I kind of try to lay out some of the key programs that our section looks at. And so as we focus our approach towards reducing air quality criteria pollutant emissions, as well as greenhouse gas emissions, we have a number of programs and policies to accomplish this. And so our new section kind of covers everything from zero emission vehicle strategies, which include policies and regulations, as well as incentive programs. And so these are all focused on light, medium, and heavy duty vehicle programs and regulations to kind of reduce emissions and get more zero emission vehicles into the vehicle mix. We have our grant and incentive programs, which are focused on helping to incentivize buyers to purchase lower emitting vehicles, and also to support medium and heavy duty vehicle infrastructure charging. And then, really also we're continuing to work on cleaning up our vehicle fleet, which means we're working to reduce diesel emissions from both on-road and non-road vehicles and developing complementary policies to ensure that this transition occurs. And then we also have programs to looking at reducing vehicle miles traveled through our ECO program, which is to reduce employee-based trips. But I'll be talking a little bit more about these programs next. So to kind of just start from the regulatory framework, some of the big things that we're doing, which you probably heard about last year, is, we have the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation, which our program is implementing. And so basically, this regulation requires auto manufacturers to produce and deliver zero emission light duty cars, SUVs, and trucks. And so as you can see here, basically the requirement upon the manufacturers to provide these new zero emission vehicles, has already been underway with the Advanced Clean Cars 1 regulation. So that's been in place for 23, 24, 25. And with Advanced Clean Cars 2, it starts with 2026. And so as you can see, really, the percentage of new vehicle sales that have to be zero emission increases until it hits 100% by 2035. So what that means is that in 2035, if you're looking to buy a new vehicle, it will have to be zero emission vehicle. And that can either be a full battery electric, a plug-in hybrid electric, or fuel cell vehicle. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that all the vehicles on the road are going to be ZEV, because obviously you're still going to have some transition of the older gasoline vehicles, but over time, it will completely transition over. Another thing too, just to kind of note, one of the other regulatory actions that our section works on is the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation. And so this requires medium and heavy duty vehicle manufacturers to sell zero emission vehicles as a certain percentage of sales. And that will begin with the 2025 model year. And so this only applies to new trucks, not existing older ones. And then here you can kind of see the percentage requirements of what the manufacturers must meet. And so for your class 2B3 trucks, like your pickup trucks, cargo vans, city delivery trucks, they'll have to start at 7%. Going up to 55% by 2035. You have your class 4 through 8 trucks, which includes like your garbage trucks, buses, drayage trucks. So that will start at 11% in 25 and then go up to 75% by 2035. And then your class 7, 8 tractor trailer trucks, which also will be starting at 7% and then ultimately at 40%. So you're going to see a big transformation of the medium and heavy duty fleet as these requirements begin to kick in. And so I just want to emphasize again, this is a requirement on the manufacturers. And so it is not a requirement on fleets or businesses to purchase zero emission vehicles. But I know that there's some, there are some folks in Oregon who are already, starting to take advantage of this transition, which we think is great. And so, as I talk about these policies that are in place, one of the things, that we look at is how can we ensure that there's a smooth transition to zero emission vehicles? And so we also have a number of grant and incentive programs to sort of help with vehicle purchases and charging. And so for one thing, we have the Diesel Emission Mitigation Grant Program, otherwise known as the VW program, that provides funds under the VW Environmental Mitigation Trust Agreement. And so with this, it covers anywhere between 75 to 100% costs for switching from a diesel vehicle to an all-electric vehicle. And so of the money that we received, the first tranche of revenue was used to address older diesel school buses. So we had $22 million that we utilized for 450 buses to retrofit them. And then all the other funds are allocated through an annual competitive grant process. And so we've distributed nearly 23.8 million to 31 projects since we first started in 21. We just announced the 23 grant recipients on Monday. And it's really exciting just because we're seeing things funded like, Class 8 ZEV tractor trailers, a zero emission vehicle garbage truck, electric motor coaches, electric drayage trucks, moving vans, and delivery trucks. And so we're really starting to kind of help see a transformation of the market. And then these grants will continue for the next 2 years. And so we anticipate distributing $8 million annually to kind of help with this transition. And so other sort of grant programs that we have also include the Diesel Emission Reduction Act, state grants. And so this utilizes federal DERA money to fund diesel emission reduction and engine retrofit projects. And so we've spent over 14.6 million to treat more than 800 diesel engines, which is great. And, we'll continue to get funding around $500,000 per year in grant dollars to kind of be able to allocate towards diesel emission reductions. And then we also have our CMAQ grants, or Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Grants, which is a program between DEQ and ODOT to administer funds from the Federal Highway Administration to kind of improve air quality specifically in non-attainment or maintenance areas. But basically utilized to reduce transportation emissions. And so it can be used to fund other zero emission vehicle projects, such as vehicle acquisitions, engine conversions, refueling, or even charging facilities. So kind of shifting a little bit, just in the rebate programs and incentive programs, we also have our wildly successful Oregon Clean Vehicle Rebate Program that we administer. And this is for passenger cars. And so basically we offer rebates to encourage Oregonians to transition to electric vehicles. So we give $2,500 for the purchase or lease of a new electric vehicle, then we also provide an additional $5,000 for the purchase or lease of a new or used electric vehicle for lower moderate income households. And so if you're a lower moderate income household purchasing new, you could get up to $7,500. But if you're just purchasing used, then you can just get that $5,000, which can really, you know, help reduce that that cost for the household. And these can also be stacked with the federal tax credits that are available right now. And since the program's inception, we've issued over 30,000 rebates worth about $78 million. And so with that, you know, we do only get $12 million a year from the legislature, but lately the demand has outpaced the funding. So we did have to suspend the program as of May 1st of this year until we can get our next tranche of funding in 2024. And so we anticipate we'll reopen the program in March, but based on sort of past participation and interest in the program, we anticipate we'll only be able to be open for 2 months next year. So as I tell everyone, if you're thinking of buying an electric vehicle, then March and April are the times to buy it. But, you know, one of the other things too is we're trying to find additional funding for this just because of the how popular it has been. We also have another new program that's looking at infrastructure. And so we have the Oregon Zero Emission Fueling Grants. And so we did receive, you know, $15 million in one-time funding for the, from the legislature to, you know, sort of help pilot some medium and heavy-duty zero-emission fueling projects. And so earlier this year, we did announce grants that went to both public and private entities. And so we have 14 projects across Oregon that's kind of looking at things like, you know, setting up charging infrastructure for public works fleets, for buses, for shipping yard equipment, for refuse trucks, warehouse fleets, as well as electric snow groomers. And so really the goal of this is to kind of learn from the projects as they progress with the hope of being able to support future efforts to transition even more medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles and charging infrastructure. We know that ODOT, our partner agency, is also, you know, trying to sort of stand up a lot of other public infrastructure. They've been applying for federal grants. And so part of this is just kind of, you know, working with them to kind of figure out, you know, where are the gaps in charging? You know, how can we support fleets as they look to make this transition? And so one other thing too is we're about to start up a medium and heavy duty vehicle rebate program. The Oregon legislature recently approved a rebate program that DEQ will administer. But in order for us to do so, we do have to go through rulemaking this upcoming year to kind of establish program parameters, you know, what types of vehicles will be rebated, how much. We do only have $3 million for this funding. So I will just say that funding will not go far when you kind of look at the prices of zero emission trucks versus your conventional trucks. But we're hopeful that by having at least the framework in place, it'll help us to kind of be able to pursue other funding sources, whether through federal funding or other funding that we might be able to find. Because we feel like this is also really critical to kind of help assist fleets in making that transition to zero emission vehicle technology. And the plan is to begin issuing those rebates in early 2025. So, you know, so while I've talked a lot about, you know, many of the programs and policies that are going to move us towards zero emission technologies, you know, we still have kind of the task of addressing diesel trucks and engines until that transition to zero emission vehicles can occur. And so one of the ways that we're getting at that is through our heavy duty low NOx omnibus regulation. And so these are rules that basically reduce the oxides of nitrogen and particulate matter for new, medium, and heavy duty trucks with these engines. And so the rules do start with the 2024 engine model year, although we are engaging in a rulemaking to delay implementation of the rule to 2025, just due to existing engine availability concerns about manufacturers being able to meet the current standard, and also the fact that there's currently some updates by California to the rulemaking. And just for reference, these are rules that we've adopted by reference from California. And so we do have to adopt them identically. And so California is making some tweaks to kind of account for that. So we're proposing to delay to kind of allow California and the manufacturers kind of work out some of the implementation issues, and then we'll begin the requirements in 2025. And then let's see here. And then, there will be no lower NOx emissions required for the 2027 engine model year. And so you're going to, as we continue to move towards zero emission vehicles, the existing diesel trucks will continue to get cleaner and cleaner, because we recognize that these trucks stay on the road for a long time. Another thing that we have to kind of try and get some of the diesel emissions is a diesel emission identification program. And so this is a voluntary program for emissions labeling. And so it looks at non-road equipment, dump trucks, and concrete mixer trucks. And so basically, there'll be program labels that will issue to basically make it easier to track engine certification and whether or not these trucks have been retrofitted or not. And so it'll help, I think, overall with some of other complementary programs that are happening within Oregon. For example, there are clean diesel contracting standards. The city of Portland has adopted their clean air construction standard. So it does require, diesel power construction equipment used on their contracts to meet engine requirements, such as retrofits, just depending on the engine year. And so these are some other ways to kind of like help ensure that or try and encourage sort of contractors and others to kind of get cleaner equipment. And then I guess kind of lastly, the other thing we have is our employee commute options program. And so also called our eco rules. And so basically it's a program that applies to employers in the Portland area with more than 100 employees reporting to a work site. And so these employers, have to provide incentives for employee use of commute options like taking the bus or carpooling. And the incentives have to have the potential to reduce the commute trips to the work site by 10% from like an established baseline. And so, these are things that include employers to survey employees, to understand like their current commute methods, basically develop a plan to kind of help meet what their target reduction would be, submit that plan to DEQ, and then just follow up with surveys every 2 years to kind of measure their progress towards the 10% trip. And so, so this is something else that we currently administer within our section. And then so with that kind of provides an overview of our section and the programs that we're working on. And really, I think I just want to say, as we look to our future, including how we'll transition, the transportation sector to a cleaner future, it'll also involve working with our partner agencies to ensure that this occurs holistically in a relatively integrated fashion, because we know that in addition to cleaner vehicles, we need cleaner fuels, we need a steady fueling supply, whether it's through electricity, alternative fuels, or other, and also just, ensuring that we have the infrastructure to support this. So that's kind of what I wanted to sort of, tell you about with our section, and happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was a great overview. We are running late, so maybe one question. I know, Nick, you had a question.
Yeah, I was on or I guess still am on the eco rulemaking committee for expanding across the state, and all we've heard, or expanding across urban areas across the state, and all we've heard that it's on pause. Any more update you could share related to that?
Yes, I think at this point we are going to sort of reevaluate the rulemaking because we have heard a lot of concern just from the regulated community about this. And so while we still see a lot of the value in it, and especially expanding it statewide, I think we're going to kind of look at, okay, maybe we might want to make some smaller tweaks, kind of focusing again on the Portland metro area, maybe develop some other tools to help other communities across the state who are interested in pursuing this, and then kind of maybe sort of approaching it again, like in a year or two down the road. I think right now, just the consensus that we kind of got was that this was not the right time to move this forward.
Thanks. Sounds good. Again, thank you again. Great overview.
Can I ask a quick one too? Sorry, I'm in the back of the computer world here with my hand up. Rachel, that was fascinating.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is maybe more of a thing to put in the bike rack than an actual question, but I see Portland is using a pilot project for delivery vehicles. So there's certain roads in downtown have to be clean, EVs, electric vehicles basically. And London goes as far as charging you like 12.5 pounds per day if you bring a car, I think built before 2006 into the city. So I'm wondering if we've thought of that in strategic locations to keep big particulate producing vehicles away from, our places that have concentrated housing, schools, daycares, that sort of thing.
Sure. And I know it's sort of, it's something that other cities and countries around the world have certainly considered to sort of figure out, how to address pollution, particularly in concentrated areas like larger cities. I would say that that's something that's, part of the larger discussion that I think agencies are having. Some cities have taken a more proactive approach on that. But I think to be successful overall, I think it also needs to kind of come with some complementary policies, whether it's it's the incentives and things like that to kind of help support that transition.
Sounds good. And I think thank you again, Rachel. For the sake of time, move to our last presentation over Metro's mobility policy. I know that I believe Kim won't be able to present, but we have Glenn Bolin from Region 1 ODOT, Peter Bosa, and also Joe Roach. So I think I'll let you all take it away. I'm not sure who starts, but
yeah, I'll start it. Do you want me to run the presentation?
Yes, that'd be great.
Perfect. I had it up on my screen. I hit everything else, so I couldn't see. All right, now this is that spot where I need to find the Zoom window, and I'll make up for the time I lost for my question. Okay. Screen. All right, I'm visible.
yeah, it's
coming.
You're up.
Okay, great. All right, I'll just jump in. Yeah, Kim can't make it. She got swamped with some other things, so I'm gonna jump in. I probably speak a little less than she might. Just to get some high points on some of these slides here. I think you want to get into the more meaty technical discussion here pretty soon. The big thing here is, if those especially at ODOT know, we've got vehicular capacity standards in the Oregon Highway Plan. And for a number of reasons, we wanted to look at something different in the metro area. Those standards had been modified to show the differences of the metro region being more congested, but still didn't really work in a number of ways. Either often leading to mitigations that are vehicular in nature that might make bike-ped transit more difficult, or sometimes making it harder for cities to grow in their urban cores because of capacity issues. And frankly, the regional model doesn't do a good job on the freeway system of identifying need based on BC. So these are some of the high points we tried to hit. That was kind of the highlight. We spent more than 2 years really working on this. A lot of policy discussion, research of best practices, and then a winnowing down from 38 to 12 down to ultimately 3 measures that I'm going to talk about now. And we are just now we're at the adoption phase for the 2023 RTP, which then gives us time the next couple of years to start moving forward to put any metrics that we've identified into functional plan at Metro and the Oregon Highway Plan eventually with ODOT. So you can read, I don't want to read this out loud to you, but again, looking at system efficiency, making sure people have good access, reliable transportation, safety, and comfort in all modes. Some of these, if you read the Secretary Pete planning emphasis areas, you'll see some common language here. I think the safety and comfort also shows up in the Oregon Transportation Plan. Again, an equity component here of how we emphasize our investments, and then developing these targets that I'm going to talk about here coming up. So, so what we did here is we're saying, all right, instead of using this table that has this volume to capacity ratio, let's look at a couple things. First, I have to mention where we use the mobility policy in the metro area and statewide in many ways is at times of changing land use designations, so comprehensive plan zoning change type of thing. And you'll see this when cities like Tigard want to grow their downtown, they want to increase their heights. Or when we have new expansion areas of urban growth boundaries, or we have to put zoning on those, so that we have to then look at the transportation planning rule, make sure we have highway capacity for those areas. We also use the policy when we are doing our system planning. So when a city does its transportation system plan, or we do the RTP at Metro, we use the analysis and modeling to determine if we have needs. Basically, are there areas that don't make our standard, and then what can we do to change the network to get us to accomplish the standard? We often refer to those as mitigations. So we've kind of split this up, realizing that ODOT's network is really kind of two-sided in that we have the freeways and then we have arterial highways. Some will call them urban arterials. And they function pretty differently. So what we decided to do, and this ties with, as you talked earlier about CFEC, what we tried to do here is look at a VMT per capita test for plan changes. So if you're adopting new zoning, is the mix of uses and the connectivity and all those kind of things going to lead to at least no increase in per capita vehicle miles traveled? So it's really how efficient is your land use. And then we have this target of complete network. And for those of you who've worked on TSPs, this is kind of codifying what we do. We say, hey, do we have enough local streets, collector streets to make things so that people aren't stuck on the highway to get from a local use to a local use all the time? Or do we have the sidewalks? Do we have the bike lanes, locations for transit stops? And so there's definitions in Metro's functional plan about what a complete network is. It's basically number of lanes, spacing of different facilities, et cetera. And then the focus you're going to get here from my friends here at Metro, get into the numbers, is what about the freeways? And I'm going to give you a new term here, throughways. Metro's RTP considers different names. Of course, every agency has different names for roads. They have what we call freeways, they call throughways. But there's a kind of a mix there, like, yeah, expressways or interstate are definitely a throughway. We do have some roads that are longer distance roads. If you like head out to Estacada from Portland, for example, but they're still signalized or not, they're not limited access, but they are in Metro's plan of throughway. So I'll get to that in a minute here. But again, we're trying to get at reliability, and then also not reliably bad, but reliably, reliable. So we came up with, the group came up with a standard here I'm going to talk about of speed and duration. The idea is that if a segment of the throughway, and easier to think freeway, falls below 35 miles an hour for more than 4 hours, then we have a need. We show a broken spot that we need to work on. And we've experimented with 20 miles per hour, same time frame for those non-limited access highways. That isn't working yet. But I think the focus here, I think, will be on the freeways themselves. So this kind of hits on what I said without a slide here, but we're looking at system planning. And so local plans and RTP, and the RTP must meet targets of greenhouse gas through, as VMT is the proxy for greenhouse gas based on the fleet changes and everything we've already talked about. And then that definition of planned complete system and network. And as you know, there's also, cities set their own standards for what their spacing and complete is. And so as you're doing a TSP, you develop up to your standards. And then I mentioned that plan amendment. So does this zone change, does this UGB expansion increase VMT per capita, or do we have the right uses and mixes in place to keep that from happening? So this map, if you can read the red lines on here, this is not good if you have any color impairment. The red lines on here are, I pulled this out of the RTP, are the throughways. And so you can see for the most part, it's I-5, it's 205, it's 84, it's 26. We got a couple of smaller exceptions, like with Highway 30 and Highway 224 show up there as well. But for the most part, these things are the big freeways. So before I hand it over, I got one more slide after this, but I want to mention, some people got very confused, I think, on the messaging here. 35 miles an hour is not an operational goal. It's not an average. It's showing, hey, this is when we have a definite need showing up. And as I mentioned, Mike can into this with some other slides, the previous RTP modeling didn't identify a bunch of, some of the spaces, several of the spaces where users are experiencing congestion, concerned about it. Legislatures wanted to fund fixes for it. And so this new policy would give us better policy backing to write findings that show that we're complying with the Oregon Highway Plan as we move forward, and the congestion management process is defined by the MPO. So this was Kim's slide. I forget what she was going to say on this one, but this is where we're going to get in. I'm going to hand this over after this slide here, right? So this is, we're looking at the throughways. And we're going to talk about how we segmented them, because that was a big question. How long is the piece you're looking at? Is it the whole I-5? Is it between interchanges? Is it a grouping of those? And then looking at different observed data, using modeling, and then coming up with these performance objectives. So is Joe, are you talking now?
Yeah, and you can leave it on this slide for just a sec.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Just say next, we want me to hit the go button.
Yeah, remarkably efficient overview of how this concept kind of came to be. Glenn, thanks. And then the thing that a lot of you are probably even more interested in is, how do you operationalize this concept? And so we're going to take you through one of the new RMP measures, the travel speed reliability measure. And it came up earlier in the MPC meeting. For those of you that were there, Josh Roll from ODOT brought up the fact that this is something we're encountering more and more when we rely on these newer emerging data sources, and then we're having to blend them with our modeled future predictions. And it's definitely, a new challenge, both for analysis and I think for messaging and education with policymakers and the public. So just to reiterate what what Glenn just led us through. So we start from this concept of the regional throughway system. And yeah, first we need to define analysis segments that both make sense for policy and are available in both data sources, our observed data and our model network data. And then we have to figure out how we merge those two together to get a consistent measure now and in the future of where these areas of need might be, of most need might be. So we can go to the next slide.
There we go.
All right. So for our observed data and what's happening on the ground, right now-ish, we rely on vehicle probe data that's provided by USDOT and ODOT for some of the facilities that aren't on the national highway system. And we access these via that RIDIS platform that's come up a couple of times lately in this group. So this is, vehicle probe data from GPS units, either from people's phones they're carrying around or from vehicle navigation systems. It comes to us. This is what we get to work from. So when we're talking about analysis segments, we don't get to pick anything. This is kind of the starting point. It's attached to this proprietary TMC, or traffic message channel network, the thing that tells you get in the left lane and get ready to exit here, is what underlies this type of data. So it's a new network that we have to grapple with in addition to all the ones we already maintain. Next slide.
Sorry, mouse on the wrong screen.
And so attached to each of those TMC segments, like the ones you saw there on I-84, are travel speed data at very fine resolution, finer than we're used to getting, honestly, from most sources for the full network. So this is shown for a single one of those links, and every one of those points on the plot is 1 15-minute average speed of all the GPS data passing across that segment on non-holiday weekdays. So for each one of those vertical bins, there could be up to 250 odd observations on every weekday of the year. That's not always the case. And so what you see there in red or pink or salmon or whatever below that line is below our 35 mph threshold for that 15-minute interval. The blue are the observations that are meeting that threshold or exceeding it and showing that it hasn't reached that critical need point. And so our challenge here was to develop a consistent methodology around how you take this data and then roll it up into one number that shows how much or how poorly it's meeting that reliability criterion that we've set. And it's obviously not obvious, right? So in a lot of these time bins, about half the time it's over 35 and about half the time it's below. So how do you to meld the two? Next slide, please. So as Glenn said, a big challenge was defining the analysis segments. We wanted to do it in the most objective way that we could and not, we wanted it to be useful, measurable, but also, as unbiased as it could be. So we weren't cherry picking and kind of basically defining areas of need based on the segmentation itself versus what the data is telling us. So our first step was to kind of summarize all that cloud of observed speed data to each segment. So here are those TMC segments again, zoomed in a little, and now you're actually seeing the average number of hours per day that it's not meeting the speed criterion. So in the red there, or in the reddish color, you're seeing where it's more than 4 hours a day, it's under 35 mph. The blue, it's it's meeting it, all but 4 hours or fewer per day. And so there's variation even along a pretty short stretch of I-84 here. Next slide. So now we have to sum this up, into some, policy relevant segments. And as a first shot, we just took the segmentation that already existed, which was pretty big, pretty coarse. These were the regional throughway segments that we had used in the past, because volume to capacity ratios don't change as often as you move along as actual performance does. And so when you look at this long stretch, we summarize all those numbers weighted by the length of each segment, and you get something like that all the way basically from 205 into the I-5 junction on 84. You get one number summary. So in the westbound direction, it was not meeting the criteria, 5.4 hours a day under 35. In the eastbound direction, it was, but clearly that's, if you look at the upper graph, that's papering over some potential areas of need and quite a bit of variation in both directions. So we went back to the drawing board, or more accurately, I should say, our consultants who did a great job at DKS went back to the drawing board and tried a bunch of different segmentation schemes. We can go to the next slide. And I think, let's see, we're still in the same one.
Didn't it move?
Can we advance one more?
There we go.
Okay.
I don't know why it didn't move.
Yeah, I don't know either. So the reliability here is poor in PowerPoint. Yeah, so the good news was they tried a lot of different schemes, some of them much more involved than others, and they found that it really, once you got down to a reasonable kind of division length, that there was not a lot of sensitivity to segmentation scheme. And so we decided among all of us, ODOT, Metro, and the consultant team, that it made the most sense to take the most hands-off approach and one that was meaningful to people who were actually thinking about traveling. So we settled on an off-ramp to off-ramp segmentation scheme as much as possible. On some of those non-freeway facilities, then that became kind of a little more qualitative, defining between major intersections where we had the data on those others. And so you can see how this kind of changes the look. And now it really sort of focuses you in on certain areas. I apologize that the color scheme has changed. That's something else that we went in a lot of directions on and sort of settled on this one. Now, both the blue and the red are areas of potential need, the red being the worst, 7 or more hours a day under the threshold. So you can see, for instance, that, that well-known westbound approach to the I-5 junction is, has a lot of hours of the day, that are performing pretty poorly in terms of speed. The blue areas are also not meeting that criteria threshold. And then all of the gray at this point is 4 hours or fewer per day where it's falling under that that speed threshold that we've picked. So that's what we're going with for at least for now. Next slide.
Yeah, and real quick, this is also one of the things that we found with the VC use is that we weren't capturing the spillback from intersections. So on the old methodology, we might have only picked up that red spot labeled 7.4, not picked up the additional 6.2 area. That was super evident in I-5 south coming or north coming toward the bridge.
Yeah, great addition, Glenn. So now we pivot. So this is great. And that set up our methodology for looking at a base year with the observed data. But of course, we want to compare these observed needs with what we think, future scenarios are going to look like after different projects are or aren't and policies are switched on or off, including tolling and capacity changes and operational changes and all of that. And so all credit to Peter Bosa here, who's about to take over from me, and you can also direct complaints his way on this method. But what we wanted to use is take the best of the two tools that we had available, this observed probe data and our model, and try to blend them together instead of keeping them as two discrete things. Instead of saying, well, let's measure the base data with probe data, and then we'll just switch to the model for all the future scenarios. We wanted to kind of keep that link or that pivot. And so what we did for each analysis segment is we first did what I just showed you. We looked at the observed hours not meeting policy. We then switched to our regional travel demand model, and for which we do a 24-hour assignment at Metro. And we looked at the modeled change. So within the model, in a given scenario, what was that scenario minus the base? So what was the expected change in the hours per day that weren't meeting that speed minimum? And from that, we got a projected future hours not meeting the policy. And so you can see the example there. It's fairly simple, but it kind of preserves that we think the probe data is the best at measuring what's on the ground. And the model is our best and frankly only tool for measuring the relative impact of different changes in the future, including just, background land use and demographic shifts. So we start with, in 2019, we might observe 3 hours per day, for instance, under our limit from the vehicle probe data. We then look at the expected change from the model, the 230, say no build minus the 2020 base, and we see that we're expecting an additional 2 hours a day that aren't meeting the threshold. That gives us a 2030 no build of expectation of 5 hours a day. So under that scenario, that would be an area to focus on, that it needs additional work if we want it to keep performing. And I'll pass it on to Peter for more of the details of from the modeling side of things.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And for attendees here at Mill Creek, it's coming to you in stereo. I'm gonna punt on most of these just because of time. I think Joe did a great job kind of covering high level what the methodology was. So Glenn, why don't you just skip this slide? We could probably skip the next couple actually and just go, why don't we just go to like slide 20 and just get to the results? Because my slides were basically diving into more detail on kind of the model, how we were taking the model results and adding them to the observed. All right. Oh, it's back to Glenn. All right.
Nicely.
Do you want? I can cover the next few slides actually, Glenn. I'll do this one and then I'll do the following one. So, so what this slide is showing is, again, these are those throughways that Glenn was describing at the beginning of the presentation. The blue are the controlled access, limited access freeways. They're the facilities that we did this analysis on. The pink are kind of those signalized arterials that we're still working out the kinks in the methodology. So the following maps will basically be showing results for those blue facilities here. Next slide. One brief addendum to the methodology that Joe had mentioned was there were situations in which the model data greatly exceeded or greatly underreported congestion relative to the observed data. Those were situations in which we felt that there might have been known issues with the model data. For example, the inability to capture spillback effects on upstream links and whatnot related to bottlenecking. And so what we did was, when we reported the final results, we tried to indicate where we felt the highest confidence in kind of the model data and what it was showing versus like a lower confidence. And we defined lower confidence as essentially where the model deviated more than 4 hours from the observed data. So those lower confidence segments are shown as dashed lines, whereas the higher confidence segments are shown as solid lines. And we can go to the next slide, and these are results, and I'll turn it back to Glenn to kind of talk about the results.
All right, I thought people might like your data more than the end maps, but okay. So yeah, we had observed data, and then we then looked at using the methodology you just heard to compare the no build. So this is the future as per the RTP in 2030 against the constrained, which means the funded projects in that RTP, and you can see, we're solving some of the problems, not all. We still have some areas that are pretty bad. And I think if you live in Washington County, you recognize the Highway 26 inbound before the tunnel. Even with the projects in 2030, it's still more than 7 hours constrained. I think one of the things you will notice, though, is we have new projects like 205, so that goes away. And then the tolling is having a big impact on I-5 and 205. I think we'll see that in you're going to see this is the change from the base year. So you can see in places where we've implemented the tolling, implemented projects, for the most part, we have improvement, and even some improvement in places like on 217, where we're currently building things that haven't been in place yet, but they will be soon. But then you can see also on 217 and 26, part of the, I don't know if you know the highways that well. The orange and the red areas on the west side of the map, that's what I'm talking about right now, getting worse continually. And then finally, the comparison between the 2045 no build and 2045 constrained. So this is the full horizon of the RTP. So it includes all the projects plus tolling that are in there. And interestingly, the thing that really surprised me here is, I would guess at reasons, but the Highway 84, both east and west, as close to 205, improves, even though that's not a tolled facility. So there's something happening there with maybe the tolling is changing the inputs in some site, the number of people choosing to drive, so therefore they're not using that. So anyway, so it's nice you see the benefit of the projects, and you can see how important that pricing is going to be to manage within the system size we have. And the same map showing the change from the base year. So again, dark blue, really good. I mean, there's a huge difference on I-5, the bridge, which is our giant bottleneck right now, one of our giant bottlenecks. And then, as I mentioned, still continues to get bad on Highway 26. And so I think I'm going to skip over the next ones, because this is just the logistics of getting how this policy becomes active when it's in law, which is the functional plan at Metro and the Oregon Highway Plan. And this is the kind of the calendar. We've got several years before that happens. We're still working on the adoption of the regional transportation plan right now, and making some amendments through that process too. Codifying that we're delaying some of the things like the VMT calculation, for example. And that is it. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I see at least one hand up. Alex.
Sure, yeah, this is a little bit of a problematic question. So everyone can plead the fifth if they want, but I'm curious. I've been asking a little bit on ODOT's side, and I'm not sure if that's going to bubble up back in some way or not. But so it sounded like so far the work, Metro is approaching their next RTP, right? And so it sounded like all this work so far maybe is well, I didn't quite understand exactly how it references the new RTP, but I'm curious, in the new RTP, given the successes of what tolling on 2 facilities showed, is Metro going to consider in their RTP what maybe a larger deployment of pricing strategy looks like.
I wish I had
Is
an
it-
answer for that one. So I will say that, you know, what you're seeing, yeah, is so the RTP is being voted on in this next month. So we're in the home stretch. This project started as a recommendation from the last RTP. At the same time, another project Metro did was the regional congestion pricing study. And I can find a link and drop that in. It was some pretty exhaustive work looked at. I think Matt might have worked on that one. We looked at like 3 or 4 different types of tolling structures and documented trade-offs, benefits, pros and cons, that sort of things. Currently, the only tolling being considered is through the legislator, and then there's an Oregon revised statute that says, you know, that Oregon ODOT should figure out how to do tolling to for a couple of reasons. So I don't, the answer is I don't know. You know, I think politically we saw that the governor put a little pause on toll collection. So it's you know, the model shows we need it. And I would say by extension, the model shows that there's probably more use of tolling would help manage the system based on the size you've got, but there's also a lot more research to do on what happens at local levels when, you know, that's one of the things they're working on right now. So I wish I had a better answer. Yeah, it's a great question.
Well, actually, you corrected my understanding. I was thinking somehow I got confused and I thought the RTP was farther off. So this current RTP, like you're saying, that the work is basically done. It's being locked in at the end of this year. So
yes.
So there's not a whole lot of space for new and exciting ways to think about tolling.
Well, not within this RTP. There will be continued work. You know, as I said, the governor said don't toll till 2026, and the RTP stops, and then a year later, like it starts up for the next round. So there's a whole lot of work they've specified upcoming, and I think that's one of those conversations where the agencies have some different perspectives and they have to work them out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, Glenn, Joe, and Peter. You know, for the sake of time, I think move on to our last agenda item, which is just items for the good of the order. One is letting folks some time if there's any ideas about the next meeting. Again, these are biannual, so the next one will be in April.
Sorry.
So if anyone has any suggestions on topics or any major themes, feel free to send that to Carol or I. And then also, I'm interested in any feedback in the meeting too. If there's something that we can change with these meetings or something, again, any suggestions that y'all think about moving forward, happy to hear those. Again, feel free to send those to us too. And also any last remarks before adjourning. Well, all righty. I'll say meeting adjourned. Again, thank you all. Again, I know this is a big time commitment, especially for folks that have travels. So appreciate y'all's time.
Chris?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Bye, everyone.